Alex Kidman, and today I'm taking a look at the Aspera R40. That's this phone I've got here. It's a feature phone, and from the moment I took it out of the box, I thought, hey, this thing looks kind of familiar. Where have I seen something like this before? And then it struck me. It's pretty much a clone, tribute, copy, call it what you will, of the excellent and really highly regarded by me Nokia 800 Tough that I know a lot of viewers of this channel have really liked. It's one of my most watched videos. So, look, here's bits of my video of the Nokia 800 Tough. Unfortunately, my review model has had to go back, so I can't put them side by side. But yeah, look, they're broadly very similar. Tough feature phones, same kind of grey styling. There are some differences, and one of the key ones that might guide you towards this particular phone is that it's a bit cheaper than the 800 Tough. There are differences, though, in design and in a few other features. So let's get into that and let's see what this has to offer. Now, Aspera is an Australian brand. They don't build the phones themselves. They're still coming out of an unknown Chinese factory somewhere. And so it's quite possible that this phone is sold under different names in different parts of the world. But for me, this is the Aspera R40. And it's a feature phone running KaiOS with a small display screen and some fairly heavy-duty buttons. Now, if you like a feature phone and you want something that's got nice responsive buttons, yeah, this will do that. And one of the reasons I liked the Nokia 800 Tough was because it was tough. And so many of the feature phones that you can buy now, they're really not very well made. They're fairly light. You get the feeling, hey, if I drop them, then bad things will happen. And they probably will. This, though, should be tougher because that's really the key reason why you buy a phone like this, why you buy a ruggedized phone. And it's interesting to compare and contrast it with the Nokia 800 Tough because while they both have an IP68 rating, so you can keep them under a metre of water for about 30 minutes, I don't know why you'd want to, but obviously, if it falls into the bath, if it falls into some water, if you splash it or it gets wet or whatever, yeah, fine. Not really a big problem there. The difference, though, is that Nokia actually rates its phone to a mil spec for drop tests and things like that. It's definitively tougher, and Nokia is willing to say it meets specifications. This is just said to be tough. Aspera haven't said how tough, and look, maybe that's just because it is as tough and they just haven't put it through that testing and registration process. Maybe it's not. There are some design differences as well. So the Nokia 800 Tough comes in two different colours, whereas this only comes in one. There's no carabiner loop for attaching to your belt or anything else on the Aspera R40 where there is on the Nokia 800 Tough. And when you flip them around, you'll notice these two little screws in the back there. And they're quite significant because one trick that the Aspera R40 has that the Nokia doesn't is a removable battery. Unscrew those and you get through to the battery. It's also where you put in the SIM card and microSD expansion if you want more storage space. Now, you can't do this easily. You can't do this quickly. So it's nowhere near being like a hot swappable battery or anything like that. But in the future, if the battery started to lose capacity, then in theory, you could secure a replacement and pop it in there. Not bad. On the camera front, this technically on paper outshoots the 800 Tough. Why do I say that? Well, both of them have the same 2 megapixel rear camera. And if I was a betting man, I'd say it's probably the exact same sensor. And both are rubbish. I mean, look, feature phones have had terrible cameras for years, and for some folks, they just go, well, I don't care, it's a feature phone, they always had bad cameras. I get that, and that's true, but that's true because that was the state-of-the-art of camera technology back when feature phones were a big thing. It's no longer true, and you really don't have to spend much more than you would spend on this phone, let alone the 800 Tough, to get a phone with a decent camera. Not a great camera, but a decent camera, way better than the 2 megapixel rear shooter. What you do also get, though, is a 0.3 megapixel front selfie camera. Is that any good? Well, no, it really isn't. But it's at least there. It's at least a thing you can do. Look, you shouldn't buy this for the camera. The camera is not great. The photos will never actually look any better than they do on the screen because at least the low resolution of the screen kind of hides a lot of flaws. But as soon as you share them out anyway, you'll realize, wow, these are not good photos. This is a hard camera to use. You can certainly do a fair bit better. So in software terms, this runs on KaiOS, the Linux-based open source operating system, the exact same operating system, in fact, you get on that Nokia 800 Tough and on a reasonable quantity of feature phones. KaiOS is reasonable for what it tries to do, which is, of course, not much. This is a feature phone. People do not necessarily want lots and lots of features on their feature phone, funnily enough. If you want that, buy a smartphone. I mean, there's nothing simpler to say. But you can do Facebook and you can do WhatsApp. It has Google Maps and YouTube on there. It thankfully has Google Assistant, and I say thankfully because that way you can use your voice to do searching and things like that. Otherwise, you're stuck with T9 predictive text. Now, I know some of you out there love your T9. It's not for me. I really don't like it. It's slow. It's clunky. We moved past it decades ago, and I'll use Google Assistant if I have to on this. But by and large, this is a simple phone. It's designed for fairly simple tasks. Now, there are some differences, of course, with the Nokia implementation. One of the big, most obvious ones is you don't get Snake on this phone, although you do get a couple of variants of other popular games, generally ad-supported. They're okay. They're exactly as okay as those kind of games were back in the day. Again, we've moved on a long way, but a lot of people don't care about the games either. They just want a basic phone that works. And of course, the key thing with this phone is that it's tough, or it's meant to be tough. As I said, they haven't specified it in exactly the same way, but yeah, look, you can throw it around, you can drop it. I'll drop it right now. You can probably hear that. I'll just have to reach for it. It lived! But I'll take it outside now and show you some footage while I continue to talk of it just being dropped a few times, of some water. There's all sorts of things that you can do to this phone that it will generally survive. Will it survive everything? Could I run over it with a steamroller? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a steamroller. Or maybe that is fortunate. Anyway, I can't test it to that extent. And look, you probably shouldn't. The idea here is not really we have made an indestructible phone. It's that we have made a phone that will survive life's bad knocks. It's dust resistance. It's got water resistance as well. So, yeah, you can get it wet and it will survive. That's fine. So if you're a tradie or that kind of thing, yeah, it's kind of reasonable. On battery life, so it's interesting this because it has a slightly higher battery capacity than the Nokia, but Aspera rates it for slightly less battery life. Presumably Nokia is doing a little bit of tweaking around a very similar processor set to get that extra battery life. And in my own testing, yeah, it's true. This has less battery life, but it's still a feature phone. You will still get multiple days of battery life out of this without a problem. Now, I say that obviously any phone you can run flat if you just sit there constantly tapping at it, of course. But for most people with these kinds of phones, you're taking the odd call, you're making calls, and everything else is kind of moot. That stuff it can handle just fine. The odd app here or there it can handle just fine over multiple days. The charging is via microSD under this rubberized slot. Obviously, that's there for the water resistance. That's also where the headphone jack is, though, as well. So I guess there's a potential if you are using the headphone jack that it might not be quite as water resistant. That I've not really tested because I don't fancy electrocuting myself. You'll have to call it a personal failing. But is it worth buying? Well, look, I'll be honest. I think I prefer the Nokia just that little bit. Just the design, the inclusion of Snake, even the carabiner loop. All those things seem useful. But this is a lower cost device. It is a little bit cheaper. And I liked the 800 Tough as a general feature phone, not just as a kind of tough tradie phone. And I like this for exactly the same reasons. Aspera's whole thing is making really affordable phones. And so far, its Android phones have been okay, but really nothing special and generally a little bit behind the trend in terms of what you can get for a certain amount of money. This is something different. And whilst it's something different that kind of apes the Nokia 800 Tough, it does so in a really good way and in a really affordable way. So who's it for? Well, obviously, if you're a tradie or if you're someone who doesn't want a smartphone, just wants texting and calls and maybe a few light apps here and there, yeah, this is a decent enough device. It'll do what you need it to do. Who's it not for? Well, obviously, if you want more apps, if you want more battery life, if you want camera especially, this will not satisfy you. Even as a weekender, you're going to miss shots you want on the camera. You're going to find things that you want to do online that this is just a bit too slow, a bit too clunky to do. That's my take on the Aspera R40. What do you think? Are you keen on it? Would you like to see more feature phones with rugged cases? Is it the right price? Is it too much? Let me know in the comments below. Obviously, I should prompt you that you should subscribe, that you should hit like, all those good, classic, cliched YouTube things. And of course, I should thank you for watching. So, thank you.